The Caribbean Natufian culture in the Levant seems to best represent the Stone Age ancestors of Semites. Basically, the Caribbean Natufian culture are the best representatives for the early descendants of Shem after the flood, since they are the pre-Proto-Semitic population that would lead up to Proto-Semites and then Semites themselves. This would mean that the ancestral homeland of Semites is the southern Levant. With that being said, what is the Y DNA chromosomal haplogroup of the Natufians and pre-Proto-Semites? According to the paper titled Paleolithic DNA from the Caucasus Reveals Core of West Eurasian Ancestry, it reads, such a scenario would also explain the presence of Y chromosome haplogroup E in the Natufians and Levantine farmers, a common link between the Levant and Africa. Also, according to the paper titled Genetics, Egypt, and History, Interpreting Geographical Patterns of Y Chromosome Variation, it reads, it can be postulated that select M35 carriers, speakers from Africa of a stage of ancestral Semitic, pre-Proto-Semitic, entered the Near East. And according to the book In Hot Pursuit of Language and Prehistory, it reads, the presence of Semitic in the Near East might be explained as follows. Early pre-Proto-Semitic speakers would have migrated into Syrio-Palestine before the Neolithic, being taken by their M35 bearers, specifically M35/78, and adopted by populations bearing M89 lineages. Perhaps at the beginning of this period, or near it, marks when pre-Neolithic migrants with haplotype V, E3b, would have established pre-Proto-Semitic in the Levant. The Natufians, pre-Proto-Semites, best represent the Stone Age ancestors of Semites and the Stone Age descendants of Shem after the flood. The Natufians, pre-Proto-Semites, carried Y DNA haplogroup E, which is found abundantly in the ancient Levant, and the Natufians' homeland is the Levant, the same area of pre-Proto-Semites. With that being said, what is the Y DNA chromosomal haplogroup of pre-pottery Neolithic Levantines, the first pastoralists and agriculturalists who are the ancestors of Semites? According to the paper titled Ancient DNA from Chalcolithic Israel, reveals the role of population mixture in cultural transformation. It reads, this finding contrasts with both earlier Neolithic and Epi-Paleolithic Levantine populations, which were dominated by haplogroup E. And according to the paper titled Y Chromosome Diversity Characterizes the Gulf of Oman, it reads, the role of the Levant in the Neolithic dispersal of the E3b1-M35 sublineages is supported by the data. And according to the paper titled Y chromosome E haplogroups, their distribution and implication to the origins of Afro-Asiatic languages and pastoralism, it reads, the Proto-Afro-Asiatic group carrying the E-P2 mutation may have appeared at this point in time and subsequently gave rise to the different major population groups, including current speakers of the Afro-Asiatic languages and pastoralist populations. So Neolithic Levantine populations were dominated by haplogroup E, and haplogroup E expanded from the Levant. Furthermore, Proto-Afro-Asiatic populations and pastoralist populations are connected to haplogroup E. These pre-pottery Neolithic Levantines and Proto-Afro-Asiatic populations and early pastoralist populations are likely all the ancestors of early Semitic populations. With that being said, where is the ancestral homeland of Semites? Where did Proto-Semites emerge from? And where do Proto-Semites disperse from? Conclusion. We used Bayesian phylogenetic methods to elucidate the relationships and divergent states of Semitic languages, which we then related to epigraphic and archaeological records to produce a comprehensive hypothesis of Semitic origins and dispersals after the divergence of ancestral Semitic from Afro-Asiatic in Africa. We estimate that Semitic had an early Bronze Age origin, approximately 5,750 YBP in the Levant, followed by an expansion of Akkadian into Mesopotamia. Proto-Semites have their origins in the Levant in 4000 BC. They dispersed from the Levant into Arabia and Mesopotamia in 3750 BC. With that being said, what is the Y DNA chromosomal haplogroup of Proto-Semites? And just a reminder, we estimate that Semitic had an early Bronze Age origin, 5,750 YBP, in the Levant, followed by the expansion of Akkadian into Mesopotamia. According to the website EUpedia, titled Haplogroup E1b1b, it reads, E-M34 is the main Middle Eastern variety of E1b1b and is thought to have arrived with the Proto-Semitic people in the late Copper to early Bronze Age. And according to Peter Solomon Kovacs, historian and archaeologist at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, he says, in this group, many of us conclude that haplogroup E is one of the major founding haplogroups of the Semitic people, and that haplogroup E people were the ones who brought Proto-Semitic language out of the Afro-Asiatic homeland in Northeast Africa into the Levant and Mesopotamia. And according to haplogroup F-M89 Familypedia, it reads, however, certain subclades of haplogroup E, which commonly occur among all modern populations of Africa, are also closely associated with the distribution of Afro-Asiatic languages, both within Africa and in Southwest Asia, which many scholars have taken to support the hypothesis of a Northeast African origin of Afro-Asiatic languages and subsequent colonization of Southwest Asia by haplogroup E3b bearing Proto-Semites. So, Proto-Semitic populations carried haplogroup E. Proto-Semites, their origins are in the Levant in 4000 BC, and Proto-Semites dispersed from the Levant in 3750 BC. Let's actually visualize this migration of Proto-Semites from the Levant into Mesopotamia and Arabia and Africa, since all of the best evidence points to the homeland of Proto-Semites in the Levant. So as you could see from that visual representation, the homeland of Semites, Proto-Semites, is in the Levant, and from the Levant, early Semitic populations like Akkadians will expand from the Levant in 3750 BC into Mesopotamia. With that being said, what is the Y DNA chromosomal haplogroup of early Semites like Akkadians? And again, just to reiterate, according to the Bayesian phylogenetic analysis of Semitic languages, identifies an early Bronze Age origin of Semitic in the Near East. We estimate that Semitic had an early Bronze Age origin, approximately 5750 YBP in the Levant, followed by an expansion of Akkadian into Mesopotamia. Now, according to the paper titled How Eurasia Was Born, it reads, the most plausible candidates for Semitic remigration to the Fertile Crescent with TMRCAs fitting the arrival of the Akkadians and other early Semitic peoples are certain subclades of both E-V22 and E-V12, with relatively early TMRCAs present in the Middle East could be candidates for such remigration, such as E-FGC14382, TMRCA is 2200 BCE, and E-V3262, TMRCA is 2600 BCE. And according to the page titled Haplogroup J1 is definitely not Semitic in origin, it reads, according to the theory, Afro-Asiatic languages spread to Asia via E1b haplogroup, not J1 haplogroup. It is historically known that a ruling elite class of Afro-Asiatic people, Akkadians, Assyrians, etc., also invaded the north of Mesopotamia and brought their Afro-Asiatic languages to the central and northern parts of Mesopotamia during the period of Akkadians and Babylonians. Elite dominance model of E1b1 might be supposed for Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians. In this sense, it might be theorized that Sumerian was the main language of ancient Mesopotamians before Afro-Asiatic E1b overwhelmed Mesopotamia. Elite dominance model. Therefore, early Semitic populations like the Akkadians would have carried haplogroup E into Mesopotamia. The migration of Semites from the Levant into Mesopotamia actually fits perfectly with the spread of haplogroup E throughout the Middle East. Now, all of this makes sense in light of what we know. Proto-Semites and early Semitic populations like Akkadians have haplogroup E. And if you go back to their most recent common ancestors, they would descend from pre-pottery Neolithic Levantines. And they too carried haplogroup E. But if you go even further back to their most recent common ancestors, they would be Natufians, who are pre-Proto-Semites, who also carried haplogroup E. According to writer and historian Jeffrey C., there is no means to saying that E or E1b1b is an African haplogroup. Haplogroups don't have continental markers attached, especially when they originate near continental boundaries. E1b1b originated in Ethiopia roughly 50,000 years ago, but it crossed into the Arabian Peninsula about 22,000 years ago, and then became the dominant haplogroup of Proto-Semitic and Semitic peoples in Western Asia. It was the dominant haplogroup of the Natufian culture of the Levant in Asia, with the Jewish diaspora starting around 1,900 years ago. E1b1 was carried to multiple parts of Europe and Asia. The total number of carriers in Europe and Asia exceed the numbers of carriers in Africa by far, making it more of a Eurasian haplogroup if any geographic label applies. So as we clearly see over and over again, Proto-Semites, early Semitic peoples, would have carried haplogroup E. This is what most of the geneticists are saying. Now,